Welcome to P2GLive. For those of you who have joined us for the very first time, Pathway to Grow is the umbrella organization for P2GLive, as well as many other networking platforms that we run around the country. Now, P2GLive is a platform where we invite people who are either subject specialists, people who have significance, or people who have achieved extraordinary things in their lives. And tonight is no different to any other night. And tonight we have a special gentleman with us today, all the way down from London. He has achieved lots of wonderful things, and I'm sure the audience will be happy and intrigued about some of the things that this man has done. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Winston Ben Clements. Winston,
hey,
thanks for
coming
coming down.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
No, thank you for coming down. I've been really looking forward to this because we've had a lot of different conversations and we've had some banter, as we were talking about just earlier on. Yeah. And I've been really excited about having you here. For those people who may not have come across you before, I mean, you are quite a popular figure, and I've seen some of your stuff around, and the talks that you've done. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very inspirational.
Thank you.
And for the audience that haven't seen you, I strongly suggest you look into what Winston has been doing. For the people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about your background. Where does Winston come from, and how did he get here today?
By car? So yeah, I guess the thing that people notice about me first is obviously I have this condition. That means I'm in a wheelchair. Yeah. And actually, it's quite a rare condition, Majid. So it's a condition that affects about 1 in 20,000 people.
Wow. So
it's fairly rare. And I actually said to somebody 1 in 20,000, and they were like, yeah, it's not that rare. I was expecting to hear 1 in 100,000. Yeah. But what it is with Brittle Bones, which is the name of the condition, out of that, 20,000, 1 in 20,000, not many people actually make it into adulthood.
Wow.
Okay. So I'm actually one of the lucky few, believe it or not.
Wow.
To grow up into full adulthood with this condition.
Wow.
And I guess the main symptoms, as the name implies, are just bones that break super easily, especially during childhood. And you can imagine, I'm sure you can remember way back to your days as a kid. Way back.
Hey, hang on.
And you know how kids play, and they play rough, they push each other, and they mess about. Yeah. And for me, that wasn't really an option because, any kind of contact could lead to me having, an injury, a broken bone. Yeah. And so I spent a lot of time in hospital, spent a lot of time recovering, and I guess just to skip a bit, eventually when I grew up, I decided that I wanted to use some of my challenges and my stories and my experiences to inspire people and I guess show them that, if somebody like me can do it, then, what's your excuse?
Fantastic. You know what? It is, I mean, that alone, overcoming challenges like that, the average person doesn't have those challenges. And the average person would probably think about other stuff which prevents them from taking certain action or getting involved generally in lots of activities, whether it be business, whether it be anything. But none of that stopped you. What was it that drove you to make those changes or drive through those challenges? What was it? What gave you that motivation? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I was perfect throughout. Like, I had my pretty dark times as well, days when, when I questioned, am I ever going to be able to achieve anything, because, as we know, the world doesn't really expect so much of somebody with a disability, and not just disability, anybody who has any kind of perceived limitation. If you're, for example, if you're not the right gender, the right skin color, the right sexuality, there's only so much of a ceiling that people expect you to reach in terms of your achievements. And one of the things that really, really helped me, and it sounds obvious now, but was to have a really good support network.
Okay.
From the beginning. And obviously back in those days when I was younger, it was my family.
Yeah.
But then even as I grew up, it was getting into the right groups through networking, through coaching.
Yeah.
And just through surrounding myself with the right people. Because I believe, Majid, that sometimes you need to borrow the strength of other people in those moments when you're not able to pick yourself up.
Yeah.
Because we all have those days when you wake up, you know, it's a cold winter morning.
Yeah.
You don't want to drag yourself out of bed.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you've got people on your side, or if you've got, you know, something big and exciting that you're working on,
Yeah.
then, you know, you're gonna want to do it for them.
You're going to want to do it for them. Yeah, interesting. And so your motivation didn't just come from something burning inside of you, but you also felt that, you know, there are others who could benefit from what you're doing. You know, it's really interesting because just recently there was a talk which I did, and one of the things that I talked about was purpose, passion, and values. The purpose being that our purpose is for others and passions are for ourselves. So I guess your drive, if we look at it in that perspective, was purpose. How does anybody find their purpose? In your eyes? It's a bit of a deep question.
It is. But I like it. Because one of the things that I talk about a lot is mission, having a strong mission, which I think is the same thing as having knowing your purpose. And how does somebody identify their mission? I believe one thing that I say to people is your mission is probably the thing that you would do if you had unlimited money. So if you won the lottery today, Majid, you know, you've got, you know, £200 million in your bank account.
Yeah.
So money is never going to be an issue for you ever again. How would you spend the time?
That's a good question.
And I mean, it might not be exact, but the kind of ideas that you come up with from answering that question will steer you towards perhaps an area that could be your passion. And for me, I realized the way I came to discover mine is, you know, I've always been one of those guys, even when I'm out in the street, I get approached by people. People are curious about me, right? Because I tend to look different to most people. And so they want to know, for example, how do I drive a car? Because you've seen my car outside.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've had people stop me and say, what, is that your car? Are you actually going to drive that?
Yeah.
And then, you know, we just strike up a conversation, and then they realize I don't only drive a car, I live alone, got my own place.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
I live alone, you know, I work and I travel a lot for work, by myself, internationally as well. And what actually came to mind was that, you know, I keep having these one-to-one interactions with people, and I seem to be inspiring them one at a time.
Yeah, well, you're certainly inspiring me.
Yeah, which I'm very lucky that I can use my story to do that.
Yeah.
But I started to think, you know, wouldn't it be cool if I could go from just having these single interactions to actually speaking to audiences and reaching a bigger group? And that's what kind of brought me closer to this thing of public speaking and sharing my message in that way.
Excellent. Well, that leads me on to the next question, I guess, when it comes to public speaking. I mean, you mentioned a very interesting term there. You said perceived limitations. That's very interesting because people often feel that their limitations are just that, limitations. But perception is such a wonderful thing, isn't it? It could be your own perception. It could be other people's perception. So when you got into public speaking, how did you manage to perceive yourself being in that kind of a situation, doing public speaking? I mean, you mentioned that you helped inspire people on a one-to-one basis, but public speaking is one of those things, and I'm sure there'll be people watching this who may be aspiring public speakers. They want to get into public speaking, but they just haven't moved to that level, or haven't broken those shackles of resistance, or, you know, limitations as we call them. What would your advice be to them in terms of the perceived limitations and getting into public speaking?
Yeah, I mean, public speaking, so first of all, it was not natural for me to do public speaking. Because coming from an IT background, I'm more used to writing C# code and communicating with computers.
Techie stuff,
than communicating with people. So I remember, you know, heading over to a Toastmasters meeting, if you're familiar, which is just a very small public speaking meetup. Where beginner speakers, they get in front of an audience and they utter a few words and then they sit back down. But for me, I remember that first experience being super scary. So I literally got to the meeting and I sat in the back of the room, and it was one of those, I thought, if I sit at the back, they're not gonna pick on me. And you know, when you do that, those are the days when they pick on you.
There's times you get picked on, yeah.
So I got called to the front. I had to give like literally a 1-minute talk.
Yeah.
Just to introduce myself.
Yeah.
And I remember, like, you know, rolling towards the stage, thinking, "What am I gonna say? What am I gonna say? What am I gonna say?" Got to the stage, and I don't even know what I said in the end. And then afterwards, thinking, actually, do you know what? It wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
I survived.
Yeah. You lived to tell the tale.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I just got, you know, such a rush and such a buzz from it that I started doing it again and again. And then eventually that's when I combined that whole idea of, you know, taking my inspiration to public speaking and trying to reach wider audiences. But to your point about limiting beliefs as well, which is one of the things that I talk about actually.
It's your subject specialist. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love the topic because it's one of those things that it can be really frustrating because you see people with a lot of potential not living up to it. And a lot of the time, I like to say that the world puts us in boxes.
True.
Yeah. And it could be a box, again, because of your gender, your ethnicity.
Could be, yeah.
And any type of, you know, perceived box.
Skinheads.
Exactly. 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 Your group, exactly.
There you go.
And it's only when we're actually able to step away from these limitations and realize that we actually have all the answers to any question or any challenge that you might be facing, and we don't need to judge ourselves against any existing template. You know, you don't need to compare yourself to other disabled people, other people from your background. So, you know, I love to talk about that, and I love to talk about resilience as well.
Yeah.
That whole idea of, you know, failure isn't final. And I think that's where people go wrong sometimes with limiting beliefs. You fail and you think, oh, you know, I tried to start a business, it failed, so that's it. I'm never going to become an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
When perhaps maybe you just needed to tweak your approach.
Yeah.
Or perhaps this wasn't the idea for you. You just needed to change.
Yeah.
You know, to pivot in some way.
Yeah.
But I think people are too quick to give up because they fear judgment, they fear embarrassment, and yeah, you know, find me online if you want to hear more about limiting beliefs.
Yeah, limiting beliefs. Is there a TED Talk on? What was your TED Talk on?
Yeah, so my TED Talk is called "Your Limitations Are an Illusion."
Your limitations are an illusion. It's a TED Talk delivered by Winston here. Look it up.
Look it up. Yeah. So it's exactly on this topic, and I go in depth on that. So yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Now, you did your TED Talk. So you got to a stage where you've got a multinational kind of a platform there, isn't there? Because they spread you out everywhere, don't they, with their YouTube channel and everything. They promote you. How did you get to get onto the TED Talk? How did you land that gig?
Yeah, and actually the TED Talk it's a funny story because it came quite early in my speaking career. So I was working with a coach.
How long ago was it?
It was in April.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so you're still quite new to
I've only been speaking for about a year or so.
Wow.
But it just feels like I've done a lot in a short space of time.
Yeah, well, you have. Yeah, you have.
Yeah, so, and I've been fortunate. But with the TED Talk, I was working with a coach, and he was like, so what's your sort of 5-year goal with speaking as I was starting out?
Yeah.
And I said, you know, I'd really like to have done a TED Talk in the next 5 years. That would be so cool.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, but what's actually stopping you from doing it now?
Yeah.
And I didn't really have a good answer. So he said, why don't you check out what the process is for applying and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then, take it from there.
Yeah.
So I checked it. I went on the website. There's literally TEDx website and application form.
Yeah.
And I just filled out the application form.
Brilliant.
And I thought nothing of it.
Brilliant.
So I applied to a few events because you apply by region.
Okay.
Yep. So you choose your region, but I just did multiple. I think I sent about 20 applications.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I just left it and forgot about it for a few weeks. And then I got an email back from one of the regions saying, hey, are you still interested?
Wow.
And now my heart was beating, right? Because I didn't this was like a 5-year goal for me.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be on the TED platform.
Yeah.
So soon, am I ready?
Yeah.
I had all these limiting beliefs, like, am I going to be good enough?
Brilliant.
But you know, eventually I did it, and it's been so well received. And it just shows the power of stepping out of your comfort zone as well, and not waiting to have all your ducks lined up in a row,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of people do. And then, you know, that perfect moment, sometimes it never comes.
It never comes. Yeah. You know, somebody once said to me, imagine and believe you are now where you want to be,
Yeah,
and you will be.
exactly. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't a case of, just like you said, don't wait for those dots to be completed
Yeah.
in any kind of chronological order.
Yeah.
If you've got the opportunity, just take it,
Yeah.
and go with it. It's a bit like this P2GLive. I mean, I'd never done any live videos on my own profile. Then I was asked by the directors to come on board to host.
Yeah.
And I was like, how does that happen, you know? And I said, okay, let's do it.
Yeah.
So agreed, and then, you know, kind of got into it. So that's really fascinating. You know, you mentioned a lot of valuable things previously about networking, being in the right team of people and the right support network. And, you know, I'd like you to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. How, if you are new to, I mean, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of different types of people watching in the audience, or watching the video back. There'll be people who will be in business.
Yep.
And they'll be thinking of networking in terms of like what we deliver with Samosa Saturdays, Coffee and Natter, Chutney and Chat platforms, where we have physical networking events and serial network more recently. And there'll be people who probably be in other professions and thinking about networking there. How important have you found networking to be, and how would you say people should use networking platforms most effectively?
That's a great question. And actually, networking is something that's become really, really important to me. So I try to get to at least 2 or 3 networking events a month.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah. Because there's no greater power than the power of human connection.
Brilliant.
You know, you go into a room, especially if you go into a room with like-minded people, the opportunities that you can create in one evening, you know, you would spend about 6 months trying to create the same opportunities via email. Seriously.
If not more.
Yeah, if not more.
Yeah.
Actually, funny story, when I went to one of my first networking events, I hated it. And I know a lot of people who might be watching might be thinking, I don't know, I don't really like networking. It's not really, it's a bit uncomfortable, actually. I think everybody has that level of anxiety.
Yeah.
Some people more than others, obviously.
True.
And even to this day, you know, sometimes I go to a networking event and I think, it's in my calendar, but do I have to?
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that's proved so valuable. And actually, a top tip for anybody who ever struggled with, you know, anxiety or something like that: be one of the first people to arrive at the event.
Good tip.
Be one of the first people to arrive, because what used to happen to me, I realized was, you know, I'd sort of dilly-dally, and then I'd eventually show up to the event, you know, when the event is already in full flow.
Yeah.
People have already settled into their groups, their pods.
Yeah.
And now you're like kind of the, you know, the latecomer trying to break into one of those groups. And that's a little bit harder than if you actually showed up on time and, you know, you'd be there and people would be approaching you. And so it just makes it easier to strike up that first few conversations.
Brilliant.
And after that, you're on a roll.
Top tip, guys. If you're wary or you're nervous about going networking, as Winston said, be one of the first people to turn up in the room. That way, you get to meet other people before they turn up. If you're the last one or one of the last ones, then obviously you're going to be feeling a little bit left out by leaving it too late. Top tip. I like it.
Yeah, no, that's worked
Excellent.
for me. Yeah.
Excellent. So you mentioned, obviously, aside from your talking gigs and networking, you are actually an entrepreneur. You have your own business. You work as an IT contractor. Tell us a little bit more about what you do for your profession.
Yeah, so, you know, IT is sort of something that I've always had an interest in. So growing up, you know, when something broke in the house, they'd be like, give it to him, he'll fix it. And I'd be like, will I? And then I'd just get a screwdriver and start, like, playing with stuff. And eventually I'd figure something out. So I guess I've always been sort of technically inclined in that way, just curious about how things work. You know, my mom used to get probably really annoyed because she used to buy me new toys, and then I'd open them up with a screwdriver just to see
How
what's
it works.
inside. And then probably break it in doing so, and then ask for another.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've always had that sort of inclination. So when I did my A-levels and it was time to go to uni, computer science just seemed like the natural way to go, because with computer science, it kind of gives you like a broad overview of technology.
Sure.
So all the technical disciplines, including programming, which I was super interested in. And yeah, so I did that for 4 years.
Okay.
It's actually harder than I thought.
I can imagine, because you've mentioned C#.
Yeah.
I remember some time ago, or actually a very long time ago, in your words, it would be very, very, very long time ago, I used to sell courses for Microsoft, like Microsoft courses, Cisco engineering courses, and IT programming courses. One of them was C#.
Okay.
And I remember that C# was one of those skills which was, well, it was an area of skill shortages.
Yeah.
There weren't that many people who understood that language, and therefore, number one, the course was more expensive. And the reason it was more expensive is because it was higher in demand, and because it was high in demand, it was valued more. So the people who had that skill earned higher salaries. How has that IT industry, I mean, if we talk about IT for a little while, how has that changed, or has that changed at all? Is C# still one of those areas of skill shortages? Because I'm just talking, I would say, wow, it's actually been about 11, 12 years now, when that was still one of those areas of skill shortage. So we had to, companies had to outsource that work to people in other countries.
Yeah, and I think it's a funny one in IT, and it's a bit cliche as well, because it changes so much.
No, I can,
and it changes so quickly.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've worked during times when there's been such a high demand for C#.
Yeah.
And actually C# is one of the languages that seems to have a constant demand.
Okay.
I mean, I think it used to be Java before that.
Yeah.
But I find C# and Java very similar in terms of the principles.
Yeah.
But obviously C# and the whole Microsoft framework allows you to do a lot more stuff within that suite. So hence the demand, because a lot of companies build their architecture using Microsoft things. So, but I think there's a big movement as well towards open source as well.
Yeah.
So technology which you don't necessarily have to buy a license for.
Sure.
And you can still do pretty amazing and powerful stuff with.
Yeah. But I think in the corporate world, they would probably be wanting to be a bit more comforted by the fact that they're using an industry recognized or certified brand rather than like open source. Open source obviously is open source. So okay. So, but things like Microsoft or you know and C# or JavaScript, you know, they're not always that way, are they?
Yeah, but you'll be surprised. Even I've been pleasantly surprised, because for me, I just like working with the latest tech, whether it's open source or otherwise. And I've been pleasantly surprised when I've worked with a client who said, "Oh, by the way, feel free to to download and use any open source tool.
Okay.
If it gets the job done for you, or if it's something that you're more comfortable working in. We're not going to box you to say you need to use our tools. Feel free to do that. Just do it on your own laptop."
Yeah, interesting. That is interesting. Let me ask you a question. In the journey of life, in the journey of entrepreneurial life or professional life, people look at different routes for themselves to progress in. And in my time, I've come across lots of different people who have graduated in a subject, but they've never worked in that particular discipline or area or profession. There are areas in the professional world where you don't actually need a degree to be working in that specific field, but you have to have certain or specific qualifications, which are usually commercial qualifications rather than academic qualifications. So you can have an IT degree, but that doesn't make you a Microsoft network engineer unless you've got the MCSA or the MCSE, for example, right? Or Cisco engineer with the CCNA or the CCNP, So in your from what you viewed in the IT industry, advice to people either who are studying to get into the IT industry, people who are maybe looking to change their career path from something else into IT, or even parents who might be watching, and their kids are wanting to go into the IT industry. What's your advice in terms of selecting the right course? What route do they take? How do they decide what route to take?
This is a minefield of a question,
Yeah.
like literally. I think, actually talking about my experience, so when I graduated with this degree in computer science, which is a good degree from a good uni, and in my mind I thought, I'm just going to get a job straight away. Like, they're going to be...
like most graduates
Yeah,
do.
my phone's just going to be ringing off the hook, like, the day after my graduation.
Yeah.
But it wasn't actually that straightforward.
Yeah, true.
It actually took me, I'm not sure how many months, but it could have been even up to 6 months for me to secure my first job.
That's still pretty good going, given how, you know, because here's the thing. Look, how many graduates do we get in IT or computer science or engineering in one given year? Given how many educational establishments we have, how many universities we have, how many universities do the same degree, and if you look at the competition, to get a job within 6 months is still really good going. Well,
oh, thank you for saying that. But I was really frustrated at the time because I expected it to be automatic and
perceived expectation.
My own limiting beliefs. I should have been motivating
You
myself.
should have, Winston.
But and also at the same time, my friends. So I was seeing a lot of my friends also struggling for work. Because I actually graduated in 2009, so which wasn't a good time for the economy.
Oh yes, yeah.
You know, that big, massive financial crisis.
That's right. Yeah.
That was happening.
Yeah.
So you know, there was a lot going on, and in terms of getting a graduate job, it was really hard because a lot of the big corporates that I wanted to work for, they basically, you know, discontinued their graduate schemes and or cut down. So it became really competitive. I remember applying for graduate schemes where, you know, I would say I was the only true graduate. Everyone else was experienced.
Okay.
Because so many people had been made redundant and lost jobs that they were now coming into the graduate market, applying for work. So that's the level of CV I was competing with.
Wow.
So I guess the advice is, I think nowadays there's a less of an emphasis towards qualifications, even degrees. I mean, I'm not saying drop out of uni
of course
or
not.
anything.
No, we understand that.
Yeah, but in terms of, especially on the technical subjects, which I studied, so computer science, software engineering, things like that, I've been to interviews where they haven't even looked at my CV. They've just given me a laptop and given me a coding exercise and said, see you in an hour.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think that's how the industry is going, because now I'm on the other side of the table. I interview people sometimes.
Wow.
And, you know, people can write anything on a CV.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, true. Just like social media profiles. People can write anything on their social media profile.
Exactly. Exactly. And the good thing about IT, because it's not, you know, it's not one of those...
They get to demonstrate and put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like, you know, philosophy where I'm just explaining some abstract concept.
Exactly. Which is very subjective as well,
No offense to anyone studying philosophy. But with IT, you know, you tell me you can code, then here's a coding exercise.
Yeah.
So for anyone watching, or parents of, you know, kids watching this, just work on your technical skills. There's so much free exercises that you can find online. If you're a beginner, I would definitely check out Code Academy.
Code Academy.
Codeacademy.com. Free platform.
Yeah.
You can learn, I think they've got, when I checked it out a couple of years ago, they had about 5 or 6 languages.
Yeah.
I think now they've got, you know, more than 10. So just go there, pick a language which you're interested in, and just mess around. Because I think coding should be fun. And the best way to learn is to actually create something which you find interesting.
Exactly.
So you don't need to go and create a customer booking form. Just go and create what you want to create. Create a game or something. And learn the concepts that way.
Brilliant. So you're enjoying it at the same time. You're learning something. You're enjoying what you're learning. And hopefully if you're working in the field, you'll enjoy that field.
Yeah. Because the concepts they're the same, right? Whether you're building a game or whether you're building a big boring corporate application, it's the same concept.
Absolutely.
So the best way to learn is to learn in an environment where you're enjoying yourself.
Exactly, absolutely. So within your business, you've worked with corporates as well.
Yeah.
Now there'll be people who would probably aspire to work with corporate organizations.
Yep.
There'll be new businesses, startup businesses, established businesses, people who are general business owners,
Yep.
who are waiting to break into the corporate market. Now, you've done that. You've worked with the corporates.
Yep.
How do you do it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's like a silver bullet for working with corporates. I think what's helped me is I started my career as a corporate, and because I sort of stayed within that space, you know, it sort of gave me, you know, when I wanted to move around, it was easy because I knew people within that world already.
Yeah.
So it was like, hey, I'm looking for a move now. Could I come to your team?
Yeah.
Kind of thing. But at the same time, I think people need to ask themselves, why do you want to work for a corporate? Because, you know, working for a corporate isn't necessarily 10 times better than working for, you know, a
medium-sized enterprise, or
medium-sized public sector. And I think there's this perception of, you know, with corporate, there's a lot more financial reward, and I think that's possibly the biggest attraction for people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, be aware that there are a lot of people working in corporate who get paid a lot of money, and they have no quality of life because they are being worked to the bone. You know, you're going to earn every last cent or penny, you know, of that big salary. So I think it's more important to find a job, or, you know, if it's a job, if it's a career that is more aligned with your interest, your own personal interests. And, you know, whether it falls in corporate, public sector, or other, I think more important than the money is your own happiness, peace of mind, and sense of fulfillment.
Excellent. So if you're looking to work with these corporates for the sake of working corporates, reconsider. Your health and happiness is more important. But here's the question, Winston. You know, as a business owner, I understand in the world of business, when you have big names attached on your resume that you've worked with, maybe public sector organizations, local government organizations, corporate organizations, there's a certain credibility and kudos that's attached to you as a brand for having worked with those types of organizations. If I was a business owner and I wanted to get in with the corporates, you know, the obvious things which come to mind is tendering processes, where you have to demonstrate what you're about, you know, your financial strengths, your technical strengths, your experiences. But for having worked in the corporate world, from the inside, is there anything you think you can share maybe that could help people when they're going through tendering processes to kind of focus on maybe what do people look at in the corporate world when they're looking at these tenders?
Yeah, I'm in an interesting position because on the IT side, I'm sort of working within corporate. But on the speaking side, I'm trying to speak to corporates as well.
So you're on both sides.
So I'm kind of on both sides of the fence. And but actually, what I'm about to say is not really that profound. It's that people respond to you giving them value.
That is profound. It is. It might sound simple, but it is profound.
Because I realized when I started off with my speaking, in terms of actually selling my speaking, you know, I'll jump in there and say, you know, hey, I'm Winston, this is what I speak about, let's jump on a call so I can sell you one of my packages, basically, and people will be like, you know, you didn't get the responses, but if you say to somebody, hey, you know, I'd love to speak to you about, you know, the engagement within your team, for example, perhaps suggest some free strategies on how you can improve engagement within your teams, all of a sudden the HR managers are like, okay, he's giving value, he's not asking for money, let's get on a call with him. And you start to build up that relationship, to the point where, you know, you've given so much free value that they're actually prepared now to pay because they think, if this is what he's giving away for free, what else has he got, you know,
in his arsenal, which
other people are paying for. So I would say that's definitely my number one tip. Look from a position of service. So I want to serve you, as opposed to I want to sell to you.
Excellent.
And I think that works in
that
many
is
settings.
profound. That is profound. Yes.
Thank you.
No, honestly, I mean, the words sound simple, but the meanings behind them are very deep. If we are to understand and comprehend. Again, when you were talking about speaking gigs, let's look at the return on investment. You know, we have some people who wouldn't get out of bed for anybody unless they got paid for it. and we have people who are trying their best to get paid speaking gigs. Where does the balance lie? You know, how do you determine whether you go and do a speaking gig or you take on a speaking opportunity without charging? And when do you decide that that's definitely, well, you know, that needs to be charged for?
So what I would say to that is that there's more than one way of getting compensated for speaking. I mean, money is the obvious one that people think. But for example, you know, as a beginner speaker, you might say to a client, if they say, I have no budget to pay you, you could say to them, well, can you allow me to film the talk? Can you allow me to take pictures? Can you write me a testimonial? All of this stuff is building your showreel. It's going on your website. It's building your brand. So it's not necessarily just purely about money. You have to come up with other ways of compensating yourself in lieu of money.
Brilliant.
Yeah, because I think, and I was just saying, in the beginning I thought, you know, testimonial is nice, but I want the money. But now looking back, now that I'm starting to build up a bank of, you know, videos, client testimonials, it's actually bringing more attention and more business my way. Because now that credibility is going up and up and up, because new clients can see that I have worked with a bunch of people. And they don't need to know whether I got paid for those gigs or not, do they?
Exactly. Yeah, it's true. It's very true. And I think the key thing is that you may not have charged money, you might not have invoiced them for it, but those testimonials, those video show reels, the photographs, probably worth a lot more than the money itself.
I think so.
Alone, or money alone. Again, like you said, it adds a credibility. It gives you a database, a reference points.
And a lot of the time, if you do a good job for somebody, you know, even for free, then, you know, they'll call you again. They'll call you again. They might not call you straight away. They might call you in a year's time when they need a speaker, and they remember, oh yeah, do you remember that guy? He came, he did an amazing job for free. Let's call him and see if he'll come and speak to us. And then, you know, that second call, you're going to have the control, right? Because they're coming to you now.
Exactly.
So you get to sort of...
The bargaining power.
Tables have turned completely.
Perceived value.
Exactly. There you go.
I was delivering negotiation and influencing training yesterday to a council leader yesterday. It was just one of the things that we were discussing. Perceived value. Negotiation is heavily dependent on what they perceive you as and what value you're going to give. I think in addition to that, when you're doing gigs without getting paid, there's this thing, isn't there? Now there used to be a common saying that it's not about what you know, but who you know. But today it's more a case of it's not even about who you know, but who knows you. You know, so when you're either hosting or speaking at events or attending events in any kind of significant position, even sponsoring events, you know, you are getting your brand out there, right? So it's brand recognition. You become a brand. This is personal branding, and you're leveraging your own brand, aren't you? So I think with the valuable information that you've given, I think also people need to think about, you know, if I'm getting these opportunities, it's me as a brand, because people buy from people who they know, like, and trust. So if you're getting known and people like you, they end up trusting you, you become a brand in your own right, and that leverages your possibilities or potential of getting more business or inquiries, at least.
Yeah, I think so. You just want to see, I think there's that saying that says most people need to see you at least 5 times before they buy from you, or something like that. So like you call them the first time, be like, no. It's only the 5th time that they see you, they'll think, oh, maybe Majid has got something to offer. So it's that whole idea of being omnipresent. Like I do a lot of Facebook Lives as well. So if you go on my Facebook page, there's usually me posting a live video at least once a week.
Is that on your personal page or your fan page?
So I normally start on my personal page, but I share it to my fan page as well. And I've been asked a few times, why do you do Facebook Lives? Like, do you get paid for those? No, I don't. And even with LinkedIn, I post videos on LinkedIn. I write articles on LinkedIn.
Brilliant.
And I post those as well. And, you know, I've had the question again, why do you do that? And it's that whole idea, what we talked about earlier, of serving, not selling. Keep putting out that value. And it's actually led to people just contacting me out of the blue to say, hey, man, like, I just really love what you're putting out. Can we grab a coffee one day?
Yeah.
That's it.
Excellent. I think there's another key, a very important point to remember is when you're serving the community, it adds, again, goes back to credibility again, doesn't it? Number one, it shows you the depth of your understanding of any given subject, because if you haven't got much of a depth in your understanding, you're not going to share much.
No, it positions you as an expert.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great idea, doing lives, putting out articles, demonstrates your knowledge, depth, expertise, experience, and all that comes into play before people decide to actually buy from you. And it's not a pushy sell either then. It's a very passive way of selling yourself and placing yourself in the market as an individual who has expertise in certain disciplines.
Yeah, because as soon as you approach your potential client, the minute they put the phone down, they're going on Google. They're going to search for your name, and they're going to see what you're putting out. Yeah. So simple as that.
It's a very interesting thing, isn't it? It's a very interesting thing. You know, somebody once said about a year and a half ago within our network that he was very adamant. He kept saying, Google people, Google them. Yeah. And it was quite surprising what we unearthed just by Googling the team or people within our circle at the time. Some very telling things, but it's very, very interesting, and it's again, it's a simple thing to do. We all know that there's a platform where you can do some due diligence, some kind of due diligence, yet we still fail to do it at times.
Yes, we're not leveraging it, and it's all free. It's for free, the technology that we have access to today is incredible. Compared to, back in the day, maybe back in your day.
Oh, back in my day. You're not letting this go, are you?
But it's just such
you know what? I'm not a millennial, so I'm a proud non-millennial. I can remember the days when we used to actually play without technology. We used to play with marbles, we used to play sports, and we used to play... Well, we used to
not
play.
Sure these things are.
We can remember, people of my age group and above, we can remember what life was like without the internet. Yeah. Clearly, like what life was like without the internet. I'm not that old, by the way, guys. I just have a very good memory. I have memories going back all the way to when I was 2 years old. So,
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. It's technology is moving things.
It is.
How have you noticed technology? I mean, you're in IT, right? How have you noticed technology moving? How it can benefit people in the world of business?
Yeah, I mean, again, just goes back to that whole idea of the platforms that we have access to. Yeah. The social media especially. But I think technology, it's kind of like good and bad, and we keep hearing a lot about the bad as well. You
have a big following, don't you, on Instagram as well? I've noticed you've got a big following on Instagram.
I think I've got a few thousand, which is good, and they're quite engaged as well. So
yes, that's what I noticed. You get a lot of likes on your Instagram posts.
Yeah, so I've got a cool little tribe building over there, which is nice. But yeah, again, with Insta, I'm always putting out stuff. I think we post every single day.
Wow. Literally. You said we.
Yes, I have a team that helps me with this as well.
So, interesting.
And that's the other thing. A lot of entrepreneurs are trying to do everything by themselves. Yeah. Get a good team behind you.
Excellent. So, Winston, looking at everything that you've been doing, it's very inspirational. You've obviously had to overcome a lot of different types of challenges and adversities to get to achieve some of the things which people without such obstacles would even find it difficult or challenging. If there were any words that you would like to convey to the audience, which you feel are helpful and that may resonate with people who may be in positions of momentary kind of weakness or self-doubt, or even just in the thinking process of taking action, but they're not actually taking the action. Yeah. What would you like to share with people?
Yeah, so what, 3 top tips?
3 top tips, let's do it.
3 top tips. Okay, so number 1, don't take your situation personally. Okay. So a lot of people have a tendency to think, I've lost my job, my relationship has broken up, why is this happening to me? Oh my God, why me, why me, why me? But, I mean, who else should it happen to? Yeah, and it's that thing of life happens to all of us. Yeah. And one of the things that turns into a limiting belief is this whole idea of victimizing yourself. So taking things personally and thinking that, you know, the world is against you. It's not, you know, the world, everything just happens to everybody. So don't do that. Tip number one.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Tip number two is be happy to step out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, again, say they want to achieve big things. I want to become a global speaker. I want to start, you know, my business, my restaurant, this, that, the other. But yet they're still doing the same things that got them to where they are today. So if you want to achieve bigger things, then you need to maybe consider hanging out with people who are, you know, playing at that level,
Yeah.
perhaps.
Yeah.
You might need coaching, perhaps,
Yeah.
or a mentor, somebody who's been there and done it. And I think where a lot of people go wrong, unfortunately, is listening to, and it can be family sometimes.
Yes, loads of times it is, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I mean, family, as much as we love, hey, I love my family.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
But if it came to advice about speaking, I am not going to my mother about that.
Exactly.
As much as I know she would mean well
Yeah.
in everything that
Yeah.
she says. So,
Yeah.
you know, seek out the right mentors and, you know, networking events, attend them, make the most of those. Build up your relationships. But then when you have, you know, enough information to take action, take the action. Don't be just a consumer of knowledge, but
Yeah.
still sitting in your comfort zone.
Excellent. Don't be a consumer of knowledge, but still be sitting in your comfort zone.
Yeah,
Love it.
yeah, step out of it. And number three is, what shall I make this? I think for this one, I would say have a big mission or strong purpose, you know, what we
Yeah.
talked about
Yeah.
earlier. Because a lot of the time, people set themselves goals that are mediocre, boring, that don't excite you. I think Les Brown has a saying that goes along, I'm going to totally butcher this, but he says the problem with a lot of people is that they set low goals and they actually achieve that goal.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. And you achieve that goal and you're like, oh, okay. And you don't understand why you're feeling unfulfilled, but it's because, you know, you've just said, oh, my goal is to just, you know, work for, you know, until retirement, take my pension,
Yeah.
and that's it, that's my life.
Yeah.
And then at the end of life, you're the one kicking yourself, saying,
Exactly.
why didn't I do this, that, the other? Why didn't I go traveling? Why didn't I, you know, set up that business idea? You know, so have a big
Shoulda,
mission.
woulda, couldas. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't leave it till the end when you're going to be kicking yourself.
Yeah.
Make your mission so big, make it into a global mission. So I say
Brilliant.
to people, my mission is to inspire the world through speaking.
Excellent.
So it's not just to speak to a couple of people here and there, it's to
Yeah.
inspire the world. So
Excellent.
wherever your goal, your dream is, turn it into a global thing.
Yeah.
And that will keep you going on those cold, rainy days.
Brilliant. Fantastic. That is beautiful. And it's very poignant, very to the point, simple to understand, but very, very powerful at the same time.
Thank you, Majid.
Winston, my friend, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here today.
I really
We've
enjoyed
had a bundle of laughs before we started filming, during the filming, and I'm sure this is going to continue when we go out for dinner tonight. So
Definitely.
thank you once again for accepting our invitation to come on to P2GLive. It would be wonderful to see you again. If ever you're down in the Midlands, do give us a shout. And from our side, ladies and gents, hopefully you've enjoyed that and found it of a lot of value. I know I certainly have, and I've learned a lot from Winston tonight. Until the next time when we have our next guest on P2GLive, it's good evening from me.